Hi, and welcome back to Conversations with Kevin. Today, I have a good person, a good friend, a new friend, Aubrey, and he is a musician, a composer, and an author, and an all-around super great guy that I've just met and very pleased to have made acquaintance with. So, how are you doing tonight?
Pretty good, thanks. Pretty good.
Awesome, and you had a good day.
Managing, yes.
We all have those days, I know. I'm going to touch on your music first because that's how I was introduced to you by through our common friend James, and you mentioned that you're an astounding musician, and I have to say I've listened to your music, and I'm very impressed. It's got a lot of different vibes and feeling in it that really suits what I like, and I'm sure a lot of people as well. Uh, this is a good time if you want to plug your Spotify and any other things you would like to do about your music before we get started.
Well, I guess I'll go from most recent to the past.
Okay.
The most recent stuff that you can find, at least on Spotify, is kind of a strange thing because I'm sort of transitioning into the whole Spotify realm, which is not necessarily a positive thing in terms of, you know, what the industry has done to musicians. Just so you know out there, it's rough on Spotify. Musicians,
Yes.
big ones, are not making very much money.
No.
So it's become sort of a platform, almost like it's a social media platform, actually. And it's more about promoting your music rather than, used to be commerce. And
Hmm.
that's troublesome because it's very expensive to make music. But we can talk about that later. For now, you can find a band that I've worked up with a partner of mine here in Toronto called 13 Go. And that one's the last one we did, and um, it was produced by Vernon Reed from Living Color. Vernon's been
Nice.
a friend of mine since, oh geez, about 20, 22, 23 years now. And we used to live very close together when I lived in New York. And, we play in a blues group called Memphis Blood, James Blood Omer featuring Vernon Reed. And so that's the last one that I'm quite proud of. And we finished it just before the pandemic. We had a release party here in Toronto with Vernon, and it went really well. And then everybody stayed in their house for a couple of years. So that was that.
Hmm.
And so I am slowly trying to re-release it.
Oh, good idea.
I'm re-releasing it, even though it was made pre-pandemic. It's the music. It's like new, really.
Hmm.
See what we can drum up from that. Also working on more of a jazz project called Threefold with a friend of mine here in Toronto and a bass player from New York, in Calvin Jones. And that's a straightforward thing. That straight ahead, I should say. That one hasn't been released yet, so that's in the works for this year. Also, so the music you probably listen to is from way back when, you know, uh, uh,
That was the ID one.
right, called My Id,
My it. Sorry.
right,
Id.
and that was I did how many records under My Id? One, two, three. I did three records under My Id. A live recording called Live Revival, featuring Vernon Reed. My Id featuring Aubrey Dayle, and also one called Jewel. And so those are the Mayid project. There's also another project called On Topic, and that's another record that we did somewhere in I think 2015 or so. And that one's a nice one too. I'm not sure if that one's on Spotify. I think it is. I have to look, but I think they got it up there. So those are at least the projects that I'm involved in. Otherwise, I'm working with Shakira Saeed. Actually, I was in Montreal last March, I think it was, in Montreal at Upstairs, which is downstairs. I don't know if
Mhm.
you've been there. Been to upstairs?
No, I've heard of it though. Yes.
Yeah, upstairs, and blew that place up. So that was cool. She's a pretty great singer, and so I'll be doing some more traveling with her this year over to Europe and across the country. This one, I think we're doing some stuff in the States as well. Um, so yeah, that's pretty much what's going on with the playing, the creative playing that I've been doing lately.
Hmm. Like I said, I heard the id that really impressed me.
Oh,
Um, there was a lot of nuances in it that were very like that I appreciate, and so I did enjoy that a lot. I had it blaring in my big sound system in the living room for about
all
an
right.
hour, the different stuff, and I actually played. Is it Jenny?
Oh, Janice.
Janice. I played that like 3 times.
Oh,
I
nice.
really enjoyed that.
Oh, great.
Um, so, what inspired you to do music? Like, where did it start?
So with me, I've been playing since I was a kid, since I was
Hmm.
about 5 years old. My mom, I'm an immigrant from Jamaica, my family, and we moved from Jamaica, Kingston, Jamaica, to Rycroft, Alberta. So way up north in Alberta,
Hmm.
and
A bit chilly up there.
bit chilly. So we stayed there. My mom's a high school teacher.
Cool.
She got this gig teaching up there. So then she went first, and then my dad brought us with him. And it was very remote, and he was not happy about that. So he had a buddy in Montreal who was in commercial real estate, and off he went to Montreal. So right around the same time, my mom had a childhood friend in Montreal, and she said, "Hey, they got school boards looking for teachers here too." So finally, we all got over to Montreal, to Point Claire,
Oh,
and
cool.
yeah, and that's where I grew up. So it was a cheap way to answer your question more directly. It was a cheap way for an immigrant family to teach their kid music, right? And that way was to they got me an accordion and my sister a guitar. So we would take music at the local music shop down the lakeshore.
Hmm.
Uh, uh, yeah, the Quebec Conservatory of Music sounds very official. It was just some
Yeah.
guy's business, but but it was cool. I played accordion from 5 to about 11, 12, and I got pretty good at it. I never really liked the instrument that much. Like it's one of those things. Instruments choose you; you don't choose them.
I agree.
But I learned a fair amount about music, at least, so it was very natural to me. And then when I was around, yeah, like 13 or so, a friend of mine was putting together a band. like he wasn't a musician. He was just a friend who, like almost like this be a cool thing to do today. Let's
Yeah, yeah. I
they're a
get that.
rock band, So
I know.
so he started assigning instruments to people, and I was assigned the drums. And Glenn had this friend of mine, Glenn Richardson, had a guitar, an acoustic guitar. Another friend of mine, and Andy Jameson, just happened to have this hacky bass guitar and an amp. I guess and I don't know how he got it, but he had it. And I borrowed another friend's bass drum, snare drum, and a pedal and some sticks. And yeah, I never looked back.
What were you playing in this band? What kind of music? What songs? Do you remember the
Elvis.
songs?
Elvis.
Elvis.
Yeah.
Wow.
Heartbreak Hotel. That was the first one we
Interesting.
learned. Yeah, Elvis. Yeah, we learned that. And it wasn't too long after that we started to, rehearse regularly. And, I got my first drum set for Christmas that year and, started learning what was that? So that would have been like 1978. Yeah, so like the Ramones,
Oh
eh,
yeah.
Kiss, uh, What else did we start learning at that time? Even like a little bit of pseudo disco hits. We
Oh,
were
really?
practicing.
Do you remember any of those songs? Because I'm curious.
Oh, you remember this song called "Shame"? Shame, 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 shame on
Yes.
you. we played that one.
Oh, that's cool.
You can't dance too.
That's funny.
So you played that, and then as your technique gets better, you start trying more challenging stuff. So I started getting into Led Zeppelin, and I got really big into Led Zeppelin for a while.
Well, now you're you're one of my best friends.
And well, John
I'm a
Bonham.
huge Zeppelin fan. And John Bonham is probably one of my favorite drummers to listen to. Probably not the most technical and most
Oh,
skilled drummer, but I
that's
just love his sound.
that's not true. Bonham's got very good technique. He's got
Really?
yeah. He's got actually pretty great technique.
Okay.
He's a really strong blues drummer. And he's able to. They were able to take take all that black music and run with it. It's the nature of the time, nature of the day,
Hmm.
and it's an old story that's been repeated over and over again, and it's
Yeah.
repeated today.
Well, I watched the first impression video, and it was an R&B guy who never heard Led Zeppelin before,
Oh yeah, yeah,
and he was listening to "Your Time Is Going to Come,"
right.
and he said, "I feel like I'm in a church down south." He goes, and then he says, "Plant sounds like an old black guy. He doesn't sound like a white guy." And he was really impressed by it. And it's funny that you mentioned that they retooled that old music, and there is a lot of classic old style blues influence in them. They didn't do the standards, you know what I mean? They did more deeper cuts, you know what I mean?
Well, all the British invasion was a bunch of young Brits wishing they were young black kids in America. That's
Exactly.
what they actually
Yeah,
wished.
I agree
But
with
they
that
weren't.
100%.
They
Yeah.
weren't. They
No.
were who they were.
Yeah.
They were able to do their best to copy that music.
Yeah.
And like with many cool things that come out of emulation, something a little different was created.
Yeah.
They missed the mark and ended up creating the Rolling Stones.
Yeah.
They missed the
Exactly.
mark and ended
Yeah.
up creating the Beatles. They missed the mark, and that was a constant thing.
Yeah.
And of course, because the way the world was, white music's always promoted more.
Yes. No, I understand that. Yeah.
So that's why they became so successful. The Rolling Stones, however, were very good for drawing attention to the originals, which I always
Yes.
thought was a great thing. And that's Mick, I think he
Yeah.
was always sensitive to that. That, you
Yes.
have Muddy Waters come up or John Lee Hooker. He would make sure everyone knows this is the dude, not us.
Yeah.
you know?
No,
So
I've heard a lot of stories about the Stones and their integration, and they even brought musicians with them that
yeah,
were not supposed to be playing with white people, and it was controversial back then, and
well,
they just did it because that's what they wanted to do.
absolutely. And they
And
refused
I respect that. That's pretty cool.
they refused to play for segregated halls and all kinds of
Yeah, that's right. And that was well, I don't think Britain had the same issues as the US as far as stuff like
oh, they
that, as
had
far as
different issues.
historically
It had the
speaking.
same issues. It had the same.
They did, yeah. I don't know the issues in
Oh yeah,
England, so I'm just guessing.
it was just different.
It was different. Okay.
It was different.
Okay.
It's a different place, and people
Yeah.
really, and also the fact that it's like the Commonwealth nations were coming into the country.
Hmm.
They felt inundated. But hey, you're the queen. You asked us to, we're your subjects. You can't turn
Yeah,
us away.
I
Sorry.
know. Right?
Don't conquer us then next time. Don't.
No, yeah, that could be a whole other show because it's insane.
Yeah,
But
but still, I mean, I think it's something that the world's going to have to always
yeah,
end with, right?
yeah,
So,
exactly.
anyway, getting back to influence,
Yes, I was going to ask you what your favorite band was growing up. Like what?
growing up,
Yeah, when you were a teenager.
that's really hard because, the more I learned, the more I realized I didn't know.
Yes.
And that stays true to this very second.
I could say the same about guitar. The more I play, the more I realize how much I don't know.
Yeah. So as a result, I stopped trying to say this is my favorite because there was always something just as fascinating around the corner. So
Hmm.
it was like having it's like having a really nice collection. I'd rather think of it that way. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I agree.
Like if you collect cars, right? And well, I got this Ferrari. Yeah, but I got this Porsche. Oh, but I
Mm,
got this Rolls Royce, and like they're all cool cars.
true.
By the way, I have none of those cars.
Yeah.
you know?
Neither do I.
But you see, the example is like you can't say necessarily like, wow, like that Ferrari is so much better than this because it's different,
Hmm.
different high level car, or that
Yeah.
whatever that Lamborghini is absolutely better than this. So because no, they're all amazing in their own way. So that's kind of how, honestly, it's very hard for me to answer that question. I used to listen to, when I was a teenager, primarily, I tell you, I used to listen to, I mean, off the top of my head, like well, I always had at least five different groups going at a time. So in the early days, it was mostly rock music because that was the easiest for me to understand on the drums. And, I really enjoyed Van Halen and Led Zeppelin and Rush, um, and Black Sabbath.
I was a big Sabbath fan myself
And I thought all the
back in the day.
drummers, especially the rhythm sections, bass and drums, were in all those bands were just phenomenal. And I could sort of understand pieces of what they were doing, and slowly my vocabulary was starting to get better. And then also at the same time, my sister introduced me um, to Max Roach. Max Roach and Anthony Braxton. So there was that, and then she bought me this record called Drum Night at Birdland, and that was Philly Joe Jones, um, Charlie Persip, Elvin Jones, and Art Blakey. For those who really are steeped in jazz and jazz drummers, that's like the pinnacle of drumming from the 1940s through the late 60s, you know?
Hmm.
And, that stuff was like, wow, okay. Let me listen to this, put that away for a while because I have no idea how that's going. What's going on over there? And then I would dip back in as I got better, and slowly I started to understand what they were doing and how to get that sound. And by that time, I think is when I met Jamie. I sort of come to that point when I went to Vanier and started to understand how that works. So then my tastes all changed.
Yeah.
I listened to less rock and started to venture towards the unknown. Like, what is that? Oh, I used to like Jethro Tull a lot as well.
Mm.
Because pretty interesting playing. So then I started listening to bands like Brand X and Return to Forever and the Mahavishnu Orchestra. More fusion things, Chick Corea's groups,
Yeah.
Weather Report.
Oh, yeah, that's good. I like that.
And so I started to really figure that stuff out and
Hmm.
start to emulate it and take vocabulary from that and listen to that incessantly to help build up my playing. And then funny enough, I kind of stopped playing the drums for a while. I went to McGill University,
Oh, yeah.
only studied classical music.
Hmm.
For that 3-year period, I was listening more like to Stravinsky and Shostakovich, Tchaikovsky, you know, uh, uh, a lot of different composers, modern composers, and playing at McGill. It was cool because you got to do some professional work as well. So I was part of the McGill Percussion Ensemble under Pierre Beluge, and that was very intense, to say
Hmm.
the least. And I learned a lot. and technically especially, this and musically reading. And, we used to do CBC gigs, and that's kind of when it started to become very real suddenly.
Yeah.
Um, you
That's
know,
something I never learned is how to read or write music. I play by ear. I'm the least musician you'll ever meet.
you're saying,
Yeah, I'm
we're
totally.
all like that, really.
I'm an improv person. I'm a intuitive player, but when I jam with real musicians, and I say real musicians because I don't consider myself a real musician. I'm more of an art person. To me, it's like art for me. And when I play with other people, I don't speak the lingo,
Mm.
but I can follow along and fit in. I just don't speak the lingo, you know?
Right. Well, I mean, I play with all kinds of musicians. I play with musicians who, will just get a book and will read the book. So I play at that level. But I also play with a lot of people who don't know anything about music, but they make great music nonetheless. I'm making a record
Mm.
right now with a guy named Dan Chasen. It's his project. And the music's really good. But he's not like a real steep musician, but he sings great and writes really nice, cool songs, kind of roots rock, a little bit of funk in there.
Hmm.
So, I think the key to being a strong sideman is being able to be flexible,
Yes.
so that if a situation is like very book oriented where you just read and get through it, you're able to make that sound really good. And if a situation is purely the opposite of that, then you still want to make it feel very organized and sound great. And, so that's the challenge. Um, yeah. So I got through the Gill and then went to America after that. I,
Oh,
I,
really?
I should also back up and say that when I was in Vanier, with James and a guy named Ronnie Page, he was pretty significant in my life as well. Just I think in terms of getting me focused and very serious about practicing, and I practiced before, of course, but I think he just got me a little more organized about it, and also had me set goals that I would strive to achieve musically and technically, and that served me well going forward. And we lost Ronnie quite young; he was only in his early 50s, I think, when he passed.
Oh, that's sad.
It was just rough. Yeah, it's rough on everybody.
Hmm.
Um, but um, But yeah, so McGill was great, got through that and classical music, then started to venture back into drums because while I was at McGill, I did sort of sneak into the big band and I ended up playing in the big band.
I
And
like big band music.
yeah, it was cool. And
Yeah, I mean, I'm very cheesy. I love the Glenn Miller band. I just love all that stuff and Buddy Rich and all
yeah,
that
cool.
that genre. I'm not very well versed on the big band stuff because I can't say I can name off albums and stuff like that. But what I've heard and what I hear when I put it on like a random Spotify big band thing and not really pay attention to who's playing, I just really enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, big bands is an extensive thing. Of course, it has you mentioned the traditional ones from the 1930s and 40s, but of course, the art form continued despite the crushing expense of it, and it's something that students study in school.
Hmm.
Something that because it's great for reading, and it's a style that will serve you well. In terms of being able to deal with studio playing and orchestral playing and ensemble playing in general. So they use it as a creative outlet in school and also as an educative one as well. So I did that and moved to America to go to Manhattan School of Music, where I studied with John Riley and slowly made my way into the New York scene.
Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Well, since you were in New York and you did a lot of sessions, I imagine.
Well, a fair amount. It wasn't. It wasn't. The like I think everywhere in the world, the at the time. So I went to America in the late '80s, like 1988,
Hmm.
So the rhythm sections, a lot of electronic music was happening. The home studio starting to come together. Not
Yeah.
like as we think of it now, but people were starting to gather gear and be able to create things on their own. So the reason I'm saying that is like, in the 1970s, 60s, 70s, if you wanted to record something with a rhythm section, you had to hire a rhythm section.
Yeah.
Like you had to hire, like if you wanted just like a 1 minute spot to sell hamburgers,
Hmm.
you had to hire a drummer and a bass player. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you couldn't just make the music happen. But then eventually got to the point where, one guy could make it sound like this rhythm section. It might have
Yeah.
been cheesy, but that didn't matter. In fact, it became a style.
It
That
became a
sound
style.
on the 80s, that cheesy rhythm section sound.
Yeah, that's right. I remember in '86 when I first got my real job, which I just retired from after 35 years.
Okay.
Um, One of my first expenses was a Fostex 484 track 8 line mixer,
There you go.
and
Brought
I
that bad boy home.
I bounced those tracks like like it was nobody's business, and I just did some recordings because before that, what I had done is I bought myself a double tape deck that had a you can copy from one tape to the other, but you could also put a microphone. So while you're copying from one tape to the other, you can overdub.
Overdubbed on. Well, you were
So
really like you were digging deep.
that was my first experience at about 16 was a double tape deck that I could overdub. And then I finally got the money after a good job when I was 20 and bought the Fostex. So I was just saying that because you mentioned the home recording, and I was at the beginning of all that and
Right.
doing that at home. And now I got this whole studio here and I got 20 lines in and endless tracks. And
Yeah, and it doesn't
it's
cost that
incredible what we can do today.
for much less money. So
Hmm.
as a result, to answer your questions about doing sessions and stuff, there was less of it. Right?
Hmm.
That's really what I'm saying. But I did a fair amount. I made a fair amount of records, did a few jingles here and there. But I would say most of what I did when I was in America, most of it was touring. I toured a lot. I toured especially Europe. Did Europe, did Japan, did a lot of America, around America.
Hmm. What was your favorite gig? And let's say in those days, what out of all touring Europe and America, what gig stood out in your mind or stands out right now as I ask you?
That's funny, they're all great,
Hmm.
and I was very lucky I think, to be with people who treated me pretty fairly for the most part, and I didn't. There can be real horror stories out there,
Mm,
you know, uh, and I felt that so that I'd say everybody was great. Um, Again, it's kind of like when you ask me what's your favorite band. I
I
have to
understand.
categorize them. Because some of them, there's one group that we opened up for Peter Gabriel,
Oh, nice.
Secret World Tour, and that one was called Hassan Hakmoun and Zahar, and that was a North African group, and it was full of people that I had recruited into the band, and the leader of the band was a really good friend of mine. So there was a bit of a brotherly connection in the group,
Okay.
us against the world kind of thing.
And
Uh,
it's a big ticket too, so that's pretty sweet.
yeah, so we there's actually footage of that band. If you look up, yeah, I think if you look up Hassan Hakmoun and Zahar, Woodstock '94, that should get you on YouTube. That should get you that show we did. And
Oh,
so like that. that group was, in terms of having a connection, they could have been my favorite in that respect. In the
Hmm.
respect of really getting me into the scene, with like players at a much higher level, I would say that would be James Blood Ulmer. I toured a lot with him through Europe, Australia, all over America. And that was sort of like a blues slash avant-garde type thing, but more on the blues side, pretty aggressive. And it was challenging playing. I got to do lots of drum solos and stuff like that, you know,
That's cool. Always fun, eh?
and made a few records with him. A
Hmm.
nice record that I like is called Live. It's James Blood Ulmer live at the Bayerischerhof. And the Bayerischerhof is a swanky hotel slash jazz club in Munich, Germany. And that one came out real good. I'm actually that was the first time it was. 'Cause I done recordings before that, records, and they were good, but I think I felt like I was trying to prove something, you know,
Okay.
when you're young, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, for sure.
trying to prove to myself that I have what it takes, try to prove to other people that I have what it takes. So in my mind, when I hear it now, it sounds a little young, and I always felt there was something off about my recordings. But that live recording at the Bayerischer was the first one where I felt like, wow, I think I figured this thing out. I think I know how to make. All right, I think I know what to do. Like my state of mind, like how I should be when recording, whether it be live or in the studio, just the energy. And I think I was right. I haven't thought like it helped a lot going forward after that. you know.
Cool.
Um, and then I did a really nice touring thing with a harp player named John Popper. John Popper is the head of a band called Blues Traveler. And there's probably some fans up here of that group. And that was cool because that was at the next level up. Like we were doing like Letterman and Tonight Show and that whole Hollywood thing.
Oh, that's really cool.
And that whole all that and tour buses and planes and craziness. But I mean, mostly state for that one. It was all America, so I saw a lot of America that period.
So you've done some extensive work with some, I would say, very important people and places and shows. That's I'm very impressed. That's cool.
I mean, it was a they were heady days. We'll say it that way.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was
it's quite an
younger.
accomplishment to have been through that. I mean, just being on Letterman is it's a big thing. As far as
Those,
popularity goes, and
those things were
you know,
intense. They were intense.
yeah. And
I
Tonight
learned
Show,
a lot.
that was with Johnny Carson then when he was in there at the time,
No,
right?
Johnny was gone by then.
Okay,
It was Jay Leno.
Jay Leno. Well, still no slouch, in the big business. That's an impressive venue.
Yeah, it was good, and we did a lot of touring with them, and then I did some another group called God Street Wine, which was part of the jam band scene as well. Uh,
Cool.
and Otherwise, people would hire me just to swing over to France to do a gig or like hit it and quit it and call it.
Hmm.
People played with a gospel choir in New York City. Just a bunch of stuff. I was always running. I
Mm.
was always
So,
running.
where do you see your music going now in the future? What's your plans? Like, what's your vision?
Well, honestly, 13 Go was something I had a lot of hopes for,
Okay.
to try to get out doing the same things.
Hmm.
It was nice to be able to do that thing at Jazz FM the other day, which came out
Hmm.
pretty cool. And I started to work with some people who think they can. They're the ones who suggested to re-release it, and working with some people who are trying to kind of bring it to the forefront and make a headline project in the country. It was all I felt like it was poised to do that. We got
Hmm.
great reviews for the record. We got great reviews for the show. And I felt like we are right on the cusp of like, okay, boom, we'll start booking this group across in and the pandemic showed up. So
Yeah.
that's one thing that I'd like to try to pick up the pieces from, and it's tough, you know. In the meantime, I do a lot of drum clinics, so
Okay.
I'm going to try to keep that going this year. And you know, as far as the near future, it's basically 13 go and threefold. You know, play mostly that music, and then continuing to work with Shakura Saida. I'm probably going to maybe try to get her on some new music tracks. You know, and I think I told you before that I've just finished. You know, we just submitted the text, the manuscript, to be laid out and printed for this book on Narada, Michael.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
that
yeah.
is
I'd like to hear more about
all
that.
encompassing.
Yeah.
It's like it was so that's why it's almost strange to think mostly about music again, because I was so in that world, you know, of just trying to get the book done. It started
What
out,
inspired you to write a book? How did that come about?
well, that is a kind of, it's even in, I even tell the story in the book.
Okay. Interesting. So give us a preview of what's in the book by telling us
Well,
now.
first of all, the book is, well, let me back up. Nardo Michael Walden is one of the drummers who was one of my favorite drummers. Like you asked about favorite drummers, right?
Hmm.
He's one of my favorite drummers because he played in the second incarnation of the Mahavishnu Orchestra. And the first incarnation was the great Billy Cobham, who was also a hugely influential drummer for me and the rest of the world, including Narada Michael Walden. So you know, a friend of mine hit me to Billy Cobham with Mahavishnu. I bought those records, the Intermountain Flame and Birds of Fire, and then saw this other record called Visions of the Emerald Beyond. I just snatched it up, you know, got home, put it on the turntable. I was like, oh my God, listen to that. I thought, wow, Billy is killing on this one. He's like, wow, fire. I look on the back and there it's like he was very thin in those days. A little, he looked like a child. You know? It was it was like this big grin playing his butt off. And I was like, what? Another one, you know? So then I started to really get into Narda and checking out what he's been doing. He played on Jeff Beck's, you know, Jeff Beck Wired. That's a pretty popular.
That's that's a popular, probably one of his best albums. Yeah.
Yeah, and Narda wrote about four of those songs.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah, and
Yeah, I'm a big Jeff Beck fan. I think he's probably the best commercial guitarist because there's a lot of great guitarists we don't even hear of, obviously.
yeah,
But
but
his
he
he's
crossed
so
over.
unique, and his style and his control of the instrument technically is superior than most guitarists. You know. Yeah, a lot of guitarists consider him the best guitarist because of his technique and his sound. I've heard several guitar musicians, sorry, John Bon Jovi being one of them, and Roger Waters, who he's played on their albums, say that he would go to Roger Waters called him up in New York City when he was doing one of his albums. I think it was Radio Chaos. And Roger Waters called him up and he said, "Do you want to come and do a solo on one of my songs? What God Wants is actually what it's called." So he said, "Sure." He goes, "I don't have my stuff with me." And he goes, "Let me just go to the music store." He went to the music store. He picked it up off the rack, diddled on it, put it in the box, didn't have it set up or anything, which
Mhm.
usually when you buy a guitar, you have it set up, you know.
Sure.
Took the guitar, brought it, plugged it into whatever amp was there, and blew his solo away, blew everybody away with his solo. And he sounded like Jeff Beck.
Mhm.
And John Bon Jovi said the same thing. He took a box, an unopened box, a brand new guitar, plugged it into whatever amp, and he sounded like Jeff Beck. So the reason why I'm saying this is that he had this ability to sound like himself on any piece of equipment. It doesn't have to be his guitar and his amp, which makes him a special guitarist as far as, a recording session guitarist. I mean, he can basically show up and just play anything and whatever.
Yeah.
And not only that, the way he controlled his guitar was just phenomenal. So yeah, Jeff
A
Beck
lot of
was
that, I think,
big influence on me. Guitar was just phenomenal. So yeah, Jeff
a
Beck
lot of
was
that, I think,
big influence on me.
yeah, I think a lot of that's because he's like James Boyd Ulmer in that it's all meat. So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
it's when it's all meat, that means it's going to be a very personal touch.
yeah,
It's you.
that's
And
right.
another thing that Narda hit me to, when he records, he'll bring like, you know, 20 guitars to a session, right? And line them up. So they'll go through they'll play the song. He'll play it on one guitar just to play it, to get the vibe, and just to play it.
Hmm.
But then he'll go back through it, depending on the song. He'll go back through the song, and section by section, he'll go, okay, hold on a second. Let me play the bridge. Okay, hold on. And he'll start going through guitars. So he finds the right sound, the right
Yeah.
guitar, and then play that. And
Hmm.
the thing with the solos too. So he'll comp together a performance using different guitars for different sections.
Yeah.
That's how much of an artist he was. And that gets to your point that it's not the guitar that makes him sound like him. The guitar does have a sound, mind you,
Yeah.
but he sounds like himself in that sound.
Yeah. No matter what he picks up, he sounds like himself. Exactly.
Yeah. So basically, Narda, he went on to become one of the world's greatest producers. He produced Whitney Houston.
Hmm.
Aside from his great drumming, which was legendary and is, he's produced Whitney Houston. We've produced Aretha Franklin, uh, Patti LaBelle, Sting. Just like, like
That's quite an impressive list, just
well,
right there. If you
just
stop
that.
there, it's impressive.
Mariah Carey.
Oh my God.
Like if you go into when you go into the studio, his front room is just gold and platinum records everywhere.
Nice.
So he's had 57 number one hits in his life.
That's impressive.
Yeah, and he's kind of a genius like that, and a great drummer. So always been a fan, and I during the pandemic, we had a lot of time in our hands. No one was doing anything, going anywhere.
That's
So
for sure.
I decided I was going to go back in time and transcribe. I've been really into transcribing in the last maybe 8, 9 years, 10 years, all kinds of things. If it interests me, I'll transcribe it, I'll learn it and go, oh, okay, that's interesting how that works. That's very cool. Transcribe. So I decided I'm going to cosmic strut from the Mahavishnu Orchestra. And you can YouTube that and check that out. And I transcribed it and I performed it, like I played it, and then I broke it down like, hey, check out this section and check out this section. And look what he does here and look what he does here. And I play little examples and I put it up on YouTube. So I started doing that with a lot of different drummers, like Art Taylor, Neil Peart, all kinds of people started doing that. And then a friend of mine in Philadelphia, Grant Calvin Weston, a drummer, great drummer, heard it and he was like, dude, someone's going to call you. And sure enough, the next day, an inbox, there's Narda Michael Walden emailing.
Wow.
Hey, man, thanks. That's awesome, blah, blah. So we struck up a friendship at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And then I says, you know what? I'm going to do a couple more for you. What else you want me to do for you, right? So I did Play With Me, which is on Jeff Beck Wired. And I did we turned these like about 2 or 3 other two more of Mahavishnu tracks. And then he says, you know what would be really cool? Why don't we collaborate on a book? I thought, I could do that. Not really. Thinking I could. I could do that. And then like it was one of those things that the more you talk about something And the more you do, because I'd already transcribed like a lot of stuff already. It was like 3 pieces or something, 4 pieces. And I thought hard about it. I was like, no, I actually could do that. So I said, let's put down a list of your legendary songs, and I'll start to work on transcribing them. So we wrote down 13 songs between Weather Report, Jacob Pastorius, Mahavishnu, Jeff Beck, and I just got into it. And that took me a few months to get through all of that, right? And then Nara's one of these people who seems to know everybody. So connected me with the publishing company, with Hudson Music, and they liked me and they liked what I was doing, and it's just been this is one of those things you scratch away at it, right? Do a little bit of it every day. So through Zoom interviews, and I went to San Francisco where his studio is last year and hung out for 3 or 4 days and just picked his brain, and we played, and all that. It was very cool. And with all that information, I was able to write the book. And the book is full of his backstory, some bio. It's not like a biographical book, but it has a nice bio section, so you get a sense of where he came from, what was happening, like how he got his name, and I'd go through each of the songs, break them down, and give you a rundown of how the songs put together, some anecdotes and stories, behind the scenes stories that are kind of interesting, especially if you're a fan. And then the transcriptions I also have a video component where I recorded videos of myself playing all of the intricate sections that line up with each of the examples in the book. So if you're on Jacob Pastorius, come on, come over, I have 1A main groove, and then have the video main groove, and you can see me play the groove fast, slow, and read it. So there's a bit of an educational point of view as well. So that's happened. So I did a lot.
Sounds like you were busy.
Yeah, it took me about 18 months, a little more than 18 months total to do everything. And so it's just.
And when is this coming out?
Well, like I said, they're putting it into the layout today, as a matter of fact.
Oh, nice.
He said generally it'll probably be about 2.5 months.
Okay.
So something like, depending on what kind of backlog there is at the printer. So I'm pretty excited about it. The people at Hudson Music are very happy, and that was what I was most, because they do it all the time. So for a first book, I'm glad I was able to please the publisher.
Impressed with you on many levels, and you're a very interesting person. Actually, I'm not a big reader because I'm dyslexic and I find it very challenging, but I think I will make an effort to definitely read that.
Yeah, the other thing about it too, which is interesting, you mentioned that, is that it's also a picture book. It's also like a coffee table, so lots of pictures.
Oh, cool.
Of him in his past, and like I said, there is the video component.
Nice.
So you can sort of, you can kind of like, at that level at least, you can say, okay, that's that. Oh, that's how he does that. If you were a drummer, for instance. So that's of interest because I knew that not everybody reads music, but they
That's
want to
true.
know what's going on. So that's why I want to make sure to offer that. I'm not sure how far these guys go if they do any audio books or anything. I'm not sure about that. We'll see. Maybe they'll want me to read some.
Sounds like you were busy.
Yeah, it took me about 18 months, a little more than 18 months total to do everything. And so it's
And
just,
when is this coming out?
well, like I said, they're putting it into the layout today, as a matter of fact.
Oh, nice.
He said generally it'll probably be about 2.5 months.
Okay.
So something like, depending on what kind of backlog there is at the printer.
Hmm.
So I'm pretty excited about it. The people at Hudson Music are very happy. And that was what I was most, because they do it all the time. So for a first book, I'm glad I was able to please the publisher. you know.
That's I'm very impressed with you on many levels, and
Oh, thank you.
you're a very interesting person. Actually, I'm not a big reader because I'm dyslexic and I find it very challenging. But I think I will make an effort to
Well,
definitely read that.
yeah. The other thing about it too, which is interesting, you mentioned that, is that it's also a picture book. It's also like a coffee table, so lots of pictures
Oh, cool.
of him in his past. And like I said, there is the video component.
Nice.
So you can sort of, you can kind of like at that level at least you can say, okay, that's that. Oh, that's how he does that. If you were a drummer, for instance, so that's of interest because I knew that not everybody reads music, but they
That's
want to
true.
know what's going on. So that's why I want to make sure to offer that. I'm not sure how far these guys go if they do any audio books or anything. I'm not sure about that. We'll see. Maybe they'll want me to read the book, an audio
I'm
book.
looking. Yeah, well, that would be good. You have a good voice and you're very articulate, and that would be a very good thing to hear
Yeah.
from you, being primary contributor to the book.
Yeah, well, yeah, they'd probably have me do it. I just don't know if it's something that interests them because that gets another expense and a pretty
Yeah,
big one, because you got to get it. I mean, I could probably rig my studio so that it sounds good,
yeah, definitely.
but it's still, I still have to get paid for that. Like it's still an expense, right?
Yeah. Well,
I don't
no. Well, time is an expense. Time is the most valuable thing we have,
exactly.
and
So
putting a price on it is almost impossible. But
it's part of
it's
what it
it's a
is.
commodity that we have that is very precious.
Yeah. So the other thing that you queried me about is the poster in the background.
I was just looking at it when you were saying, and that's the next thing I'm going to mention because
Yeah.
it intrigues me. It is. I'm not an art critic or an art expert, but I know what I like, and I like that a lot.
Well, I'm not the artist, but it's kind of cool.
It's
The
very cool.
so that was so in 2005, I was diagnosed with systemic lupus, which is a little uncommon for men to get. It's usually a female issue. And not
Well,
only
not to interrupt you, one of my best friends, who is a man,
lupus,
almost died of lupus.
yeah, it's heavy.
So you're not the first person to tell me that, but you are only actually the second person to tell me that. Which it's crazy how the world brings people around into your circle. So
Yeah,
yeah,
but
please tell me about that because that must have been quite a journey.
yeah, was he unaware that he had lupus for a while? Like it
He
kind
was unaware. He just wasn't well, and then he went to the hospital, and then they told him
of,
after some
yeah,
tests and so on that. Yeah, they had to put him in an induced
yeah.
paralyze. They had to paralyze his lower body to help his body fight off the lupus.
Oh, yeah, it
Yeah.
was way advanced, obviously.
Oh
And
yeah, he was in the hospital for I don't know 6 months, a year.
oh,
He wasn't supposed to survive, to be honest with you, and that's why he's a special person in my life because he appreciates life like no other person I know.
yeah, I bet.
He's still suffering from it because he's had multiple heart attacks and surgeries for his heart, quadruple bypass. He's been amputated because of his diabetes is triggered by his lupus, and it's so I'm very interested in hearing your journey through that and how you came about to be looking so healthy as you do today and alive and well and doing all these great things like writing a book and playing music, and
Well,
it's a celebration, right?
yeah, yeah. So really, what happened was when I was in America. Let's go back further than 2005. Yeah, I was in America still. I was very, very busy, very busy. So being incredibly tired was common. You know,
Hmm.
I would get 3 hours of sleep. Plus, my kids were being born. So, you know, so it's
We all
like,
know how that goes.
yeah, young kids and working, and my wife worked. It was just a very exhausting time. We were young though, so we were young, so we could take it.
Hmm.
And I just started to get. I was always sick, like really sick though, really
Really.
sick. And I'd go off to Europe or something, come back, and I'd be sicker, and like one time I remember I had a fever for like 3 weeks, like a low grade fever, like it never went away.
Okay.
Stuff like that would happen, and also because you're young, you kind of like whatever,
You brush it off.
yeah,
Yeah.
you just keep going. And but then we moved back to Canada after 9/11, and then I started to get really sick, like can't get up off the couch sick,
Hmm.
like mumbling my words, like slur, like really busted. And I kept going to the doctors and just kept going to the doctor, and they're like, I don't know, I guess fatigue. They didn't really. Then this one, this one doctor, funny enough, poor guy, he was struggling with alcoholism. I don't know what happened to him, but I hope he did okay. But he was a very experienced doctor. I
Hmm.
I actually heard that I think he retired. Just I think it was the pressure, whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway,
It's a high pressure job.
he was hip enough to go, dude, I think you have lupus. Here.
Mm-hmm.
And he wrote me up a requisition for blood work, specifically looking for that.
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, boom, yep, definitely. And the lupus, what it was doing, because lupus is essentially a disease, an autoimmune disease, whereby your system starts to your what's it called? Well, the autoimmune system, starts to attack itself. It thinks that your own body is the foreign object, right?
Yeah.
Your immune system, like your immune system is like your guard, your soldiers that
Hmm.
help you stay healthy even when there's germs coming in. So, yeah, it takes care of the germs, but it becomes hyperactive and starts to eat away at your own tissue.
Yeah.
That could be anything. It could be your brain. It could be your muscles. It often shows up in your skin. That's where lupus traditionally shows up. It's like has this red patch on your face. I didn't get the red patch, but for me, it was destroying my kidneys.
Oh, geez.
So over the span of about well, no, well, longer, geez. Yeah, from 2005 to 2013, it was a slow decline. My kidneys started to really plummet around 2010. It got very bad in 2011, and that's when I had to go on dialysis. So I was on hemodialysis for 6 months, like in 2011, 2012, and then peritoneal dialysis for another 6 months. And luckily, and my wife Julie gave me her kidney. I had a transplant.
God bless her. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
In 2013.
Wow.
And so during that time, a buddy of mine, a high school friend of mine, um, who I don't think Jamie knew, and Andrew Mack. He he knows a lot of people in the film industry and music industry. He used to work for Warner Brothers, and he had a friend, a mentor up at Sheridan College, who was a great documentary film director, who was making his last documentary before retiring, and decided to use me as the subject. So, long story short, they made a movie called Stay Aubrey, and that's the cinema poster for it.
Wow.
And it was
It's funny how I was drawn to that the moment you turned on your camera before the interview. Actually, the other night, when we first had a a pre-interview talk, it just caught my eye, and I was reassured about how much I liked it when I saw it this evening. So it's funny how that just drew me into and I use the word amazing not in as a good way, but as in this a fantastic way. How what you went through and where you come out of it, and the
yeah.
results are wonderful.
So
Because you're still here to talk with us, and we're having this conversation, and
yeah.
that's a blessing. I mean, I'm not a religious man, but I do believe that we are blessed in many ways through whatever it is that does it.
Right.
you know,
So that was a very heartfelt project, and
Mhm.
it was mostly a digital thing. It was on Omni Television
Oh,
for well, geez, for about 10 years. It was on
wow.
television rotation. Also, it was online, and they just took it down recently, so you can't get it online. And it's a short. It's like 45 minutes, but it sort of takes you through what me and my family were going through.
Wow.
And it's one of those tearjerker date night happy ending kind of movies. It was well done. The and the funny thing, I should make a note. I just had a kidney clinic follow up just yesterday. That's an ongoing thing. And my it's transplants are a funny thing. They save your life, but they're not a cure. Like, just so everybody knows, transplant buys time, and it's the best. It's like the Rolls Royce of treatments. It's like the
Okay.
highest end of treatment you can get to make you feel normal, and it's a miracle. I mean, it's a medical miracle what they can do. But the kidney does wear out, because all kidneys wear out.
Yeah,
Your kidney's wearing out right now.
that's right.
Everybody listening, your kidneys are wearing out. It's just but they're wearing out much slower over the span
Okay.
of the whole life. You're probably at 60%, 50%, somewhere in
I
that.
don't know. I put a lot of abuse in this carcass, so I might be worse off than that.
Well, put it this way: if it wasn't at least 30 to 40%, you would know about it, because
Okay.
you start to get sick.
Well, I'm very blessed with a good, strong fortitude, and I've been very lucky. Aside from arthritis, I'm a relatively healthy person.
That's good.
Yeah, and
So,
I'm
so,
thankful
the,
for that.
so I will be needing a new kidney
Yeah.
sooner than later, probably. Well, I'm holding right now, and they said my function is stable, which is good, so I could last another 2 to 3 years. They figure.
Okay, so this is close in the big scheme of things. Okay.
Yeah. So for all of those folks who love jazz drummers, who may want to cough up a kidney,
Well,
get in touch.
that that's a possibility because you never know where things go. You could have an acquaintance of an acquaintance of an acquaintance, and next thing you know, it saves your life. And that's the beauty of
I mean, it's a
the
beautiful thing. Just full disclosure, it's not a simple thing.
no,
And if you are seriously thinking of donating a kidney to me or anybody else, just understand you're going to be out of commission for a few weeks.
I can understand that it must
Got to
be
think about that.
something.
And to be honest, it's also not painless. I know I'm not selling this very well, but I want to be honest. It's going to be a little
Yeah,
bit aggravating. Okay.
yeah,
But my wife did it, and she's had no issues. She's doing great.
fantastic. Well, she's a superhero in my world.
Absolutely, 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 for sure. So that was that's what the poster is about. Stay Aubrey.
Well, that's it's amazing how a piece of artwork can create a conversation that is so deep and profound as the one we just had.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I can see by the smile and the look in your eye that you're very grateful.
Oh, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
Every like I love birthdays. I like getting older because that's not a gift.
I just celebrated my 58th, and I have to admit that
Ah, beautiful.
birthdays are they're good.
They are great.
Yeah. I
When
mean, I came out of this far pretty much unscathed. I mean,
right.
I got a fake knee, and like I said, I have arthritis. But I mean, otherwise, my heart's good, my liver's good. So these things you have to appreciate.
And you should
You have to
appreciate
be
that.
thankful in life. We have to be very thankful in life and be
So be
grateful.
thankful that you're able to get a fake knee. I mean, these are amazing things.
It's amazing. I call myself the $50,000 man because that's apparently what it's worth.
Yeah, you know, but it's just it's an amazing. We're alive at a good time in terms of
Oh,
that.
we are so fortunate.
If it was 100 years ago, you and I probably wouldn't be talking. Like I wouldn't survive, right?
Yeah, I would be crippled. I mean,
And
that's
you'd be
basically
like,
what it
oh,
is.
I mean, incredible pain, and
Yeah,
so it's a beautiful thing,
yeah.
and also we live in a country for now that is helpful. Like it doesn't crush us to be sick.
That's right. It is not a devastating blow to our lives to be sick. If we have the medicine, we have the system that helps us. And there's a lot of places in the world where when you're sick, then you just got to count your days, and that's sad, but that's the harsh reality of today's world.
So hopefully we can hang on to it and keep it going.
Yeah,
Yeah. So so that's pretty much what's happening with me,
that's you in a nutshell.
more or less.
I'm sure we could talk for hours, though. You sound like you're such an interesting person, and you're so well spoken, and so you're a very kind soul. And I have to I've learned in my life you have to mention these things, and I always finish my podcast by telling people like be nice to somebody because it's a good thing. Like being good is and being nice and being thankful and grateful is a good thing. And you seem very grateful.
I am. I am. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to be doing what I'm doing. And it's got to keep rolling, right?
Yeah, got to keep rolling.
So, yeah.
So I think you have stuff. You were telling me that you had a certain amount of time, and I hope I didn't take too much of your
No,
time this
this
evening.
is beautiful. This is perfect.
Okay, good, great.
We're good. So,
I think we'll wrap it up. And unless actually, before I say that, I want to know: is there anything else you would like to share with us? Would you like to promote something and tell us about the website you have or something of that sort?
yeah. So you can get me. One thing I do would like to share with you is that I also teach privately,
Yes, that's nice.
and I teach via Zoom
Okay.
as well as in person if you happen to be in the GTA. And
Hmm.
sometimes even travel from afar to come to the studio, which is always the best.
I could see that happening with the talent. And I'll be putting links that you send me in the description. So
Okay,
for your Spotify, for anything that you would want to have, any websites that will promote your book or anything that you can think of. So we'll
okay,
take care of that in post production.
excellent. So yeah, so basically, check out the link.
Sounds like a plan.
And
All
maybe
right, so I'm gonna wrap this up, and I'm gonna say thank you very much for joining me on this podcast.
you.
And I think you're a really, like I said before, a kind soul, and I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Kevin. I appreciate you asking me to come and do this. It's been fun.
All right, so I'm basically going to say good night, everybody, or good morning, or good evening, whenever you're listening, because we have no idea. So we're going to go, and I'm going to say thanks you for coming, and see you soon.